Have you ever seen a man with no lips and no skin smile? Well, now you have. This journal entry is the only recording of he and I making jam together. Wild. To begin this dream recording, if the delightful ladies who write stars promise to take you flying, you should wait for them. In the beginning of this dream, I was invited to go star riding. I was extremely excited. Unfortunately, the ladies were running late. They were rearranging the moon. I accepted this explanation immediately. Dreams often make perfect sense while you're in them. So I waited. The place where they asked me to await them was called the Unspooky Forest. I've never found a better name for it. The forest wasn't frightening. It simply felt like I remember it being frightening. Everything glowed with a purple twilight. I couldn't tell if the sun was rising or setting. I don't think it was doing either. The air smelled like rain that had already happened, and I was overcome with the strange feeling that I had been there before, yet not as myself, but somehow it was familiar. It's the sort of place that makes you want to go home, despite already being there. I remember hoping the ladies would finish rearranging the moon soon. I very much wanted to go star riding. Oh, alas, an evening with a fair lady. Eventually, I grew restless and decided to wander. I came upon a path called Whistling Daisy. Apparently, one must whistle while venturing it. So I did. I followed the path until I noticed something hanging between two palms. At first, I thought it was laundry. Then it moved. There was a man suspended there. His hands and feet were bound, completely flayed from head to toe. Every muscle and tendon exposed. He looked at me and smiled. I still haven't forgotten that smile. Not because it frightened me, but because it seemed so genuine. Then the flayed man asked, "Would you like to make some jam?" I hesitated. I wasn't expecting to make jam. And I wasn't entirely certain I wanted to make jam with a man who had no skin. Still, it somehow felt rude to decline. The flayed man became positively elated. He informed me that life had been looking up ever since he had been strung between the palms. He said he learned all sorts of new recipes while hanging there. I remember thinking he seemed terribly lonely, yet terribly proud of his recipes. I asked how one makes the jam. He explained the ingredients meticulously. 1 cup of little actualies. Apparently, this is another name for the ultraviolet berries that grow in the dreamscape. The image of an ex-lover, mucus from his body, and a cup of sugar sifted from the river of bays. I knew where the berries were immediately. They glowed softly among the trees like tiny lanterns. The image of my ex-girlfriend proved to be more difficult. I eventually discovered it in my coat pocket. I have no recollection of putting it there, yet I looked at the photograph for some time. She was smiling. I remember feeling nostalgic. Not for her per se, but more for the person I was when the photograph was taken. A part of me hesitated to place the old photo in the bowl. Goodbye, old love, bidding her one last farewell. The words "thanks for the memories" stared back at me from the back of the photo. I gathered the remaining ingredients and mixed everything together. The resulting jam glowed violet. It smelled sickly sweet, like a fever dream. I could not bring myself to try it. Fortunately, something nearby was interested. I cannot properly describe it, mostly because it shouldn't have had a mouth, let alone teeth. It had way too many teeth. I fed it a spoonful and it seemed pleased, making a gurgling sound in delight. I prefer to never dream that thing again. The flayed man looked delighted, gleefully providing other jam recipes, like one that cured the malaise of the autumn. A jam made of strawberry skins with dragon tears. I kind of hope I get to see him again in a dream, so he can teach me more recipes for jam, specifically one called Melancholia. Even if I could remember what it was, I wouldn't tell you. I assumed that was the end of the matter, however, I was mistaken. Several nights later, I found myself attending a tea party. I had not been invited yet. This has never prevented me from attending anything in the dreaming. A delightful lady in a fine hat occupied most of this dream. Though we exchanged pleasant stories, she seemed to be preoccupied in a search for something. At some point, she mentioned a fellow named the Marquis. She described him as jolly and a newlywed, quite the romantic. I asked who the lucky bride-to-be was. A piece of sheet music, she admitted, as though we have all fallen in love and out of love with the sort. I thought this sounded rather lovely, yet she looked uncertain. Apparently, he had begun explaining the proper way one ought to make love to sheet music in considerable detail. Alas, I'll spare you the rather explicit details. I became curious and pressed on, yet she became uncomfortable. I apologized for my forwardness. She laughed and assured me there was no need. She explained that once one has met the onomancer, there are no longer embarrassments, only futility. Then she told me another story. One afternoon, the Marquis had asked her if she would accompany him to his grave. She agreed and even brought flowers. Instead of a gravestone, he led her to two palms. There, hanging between them, was a flayed body. The Marquis looked at her and said, "This is my body. This is my grave." I asked her whether she had been frightened. She thought for a moment and then said no. He seemed lovely. I understand exactly what she meant, as though I knew exactly who she spoke of. She continued. The Marquis then asked if she would like to hear a song he had learned since being dead. She agreed, as she adored music. Thus I asked her if the song was beautiful. She related to me it was the most beautiful thing she had ever heard. And thinking about it makes her weep. Naturally, I asked if she remembered any of it. She thought for a very long time. Indeed, so long I thought maybe the dream had ended. Not a single note, she admitted. At the exact moment, she gasped. My goodness! Her pet cake had returned to her. She picked it up and bid me farewell, disappearing amongst flowers. I've only met the flayed man once, yet someone else knew him as the Marquis. We both remember his kindness, both leaving with a peculiar feeling that we had encountered someone impossibly strange, and someone we hope was doing well. Perhaps dreams recycle symbols. Sleeping minds occasionally borrow stories from one another. Or perhaps the dreaming is a real place. And somewhere there, while the ladies rearrange the moon, a flayed man still hangs peacefully between two palms, looking upwards and learning new jam recipes.